I remember a colleague who'd worked long hours in a particularly difficult project, often in her own time, complaining to our boss about his total lack of acknowledgement. His response: "You don't need acknowledgement. You get paid." I was thinking about that this month. I'm a working voice actor. I'm not a celebrity narrator whose name adds value to a project simply by being attached to it. So when I heard that not one, but 3 audiobooks from a 6-part series I had just delivered were up for an award, I was obviously chuffed, particularly as number 6 isn't out yet. Catherine Kean, my author, yes, I am that, proprietorial, was invited to choose one to go up for the award. If she submitted all 3, she would have ended up competing against herself. And let's be honest, that would be no fun. Anyway, this got me thinking. Do awards hold any value for a working narrator? I mean, I've had awards before, and yes, I admit they're hanging on my office wall, so I clearly get something out of it. Kudos? Perhaps. A massage d'ego? Probably. More work? Not that I'm aware of. To date, no author or publisher has got in touch to tell me that because of an award they want me to narrate their next 10 blockbuster novels. Also, let's be blunt. Not all awards are equal. Some are honest, based wholly on merit, determined by readers or listeners or industry colleagues. Others, well, it seems to me, are merely marketing ploys, paid advertisements, pretending to reflect often illusory merit. Anyway, what do you think? Here's an excerpt from the novel Catherine eventually chose, voted for by real listeners looking for nothing more than a great story to recommend to the world. A Night's Reward. Lingering a moment, she looked over the leather goods set out at the tanner's stall. Keeping her head down, she dared a sidelong glance down the row of stalls, skimming each of the people standing nearby to see if she recognized anyone. A peddler, in a long tattered mantle, taking each of his steps with a wooden stick, hobbled his way through the throng. The same hunched old man, she was sure of it, had followed her to the baker's stall. She rubbed her lips together, her mouth suddenly dry. Market day attracted all kinds of travellers, especially thieves and peddlers. If Ryle wanted to find her, he would not have sent a thug disguised as a peddler. Would he? The dog with the meat joint spun and hurtled back the way it had come, the men still in pursuit. As the mongrel darted past the peddler, it brushed the hem of his long garment. He wore leather boots, with spurs, the mark of knighthood. Most peddlers were lucky to be able to afford shoes. A panicked cry flared in Gisela's throat. She turned on her heel, painfully aware of the peddler's stick rapping on the dirt. Thud, thud, thud sounded behind her. "Run, run, run!" her mind shrilled. Squaring her shoulders, she strolled toward the trainer and his dancing bears. Dominic de Ter cursed as he shuffled through the crowd, close behind the slender woman, who he sensed had realized he was following her. Moving along with a steady plod, plod, he rued the itchy woolen mantle that disguised him and hampered his movements. God's blood, but a man could roast like a suckling pig in such a garment. A necessary disguise, though, one he and Geoffrey de Lanceau, his closest friend and lord, had agreed upon as a means to infiltrate Clovebrae's market. Someone had stolen Geoffrey's last shipment of costly silks while they were being shipped down the river to his castle, Branton Keep, a king's ransom in cloth missing. Dominic had vowed to find the thieves, a quest that had brought him to this sleepy little town on the verge of nowhere. The woman ahead moved with a languid grace. Despite the well-worn cloak covering her from head to toe, a peasant's garb, she moved in a most enticing way, like a woman he'd known years ago. A woman he'd loved with a passion close to madness, and left behind when he'd ridden away to join King Richard's crusade. Regret pierced him. He shoved aside the inconvenient remorse, for years ago he'd had no choice but to leave her. Moreover, the woman he followed could not be his beloved Gisela. The village where he'd met her was leagues from here, By now she'd be married to a good husband with 4 or 5 children crowding around her skirts. She trailed her hand along a row of linen gowns drifting in the breeze, then turned left, heading toward the open space where the entertainers gathered. Dominic shuffled on, keeping his gaze upon her. Idiot that he was, he should simply give up pursuit and return to the market to see what he might overhear. His duty to Geoffrey was far more important than chasing a wench with a sultry sway. Yet he couldn't turn away. Something about this woman drew him to her. Curiosity, mayhap? Desire? A grin ticked up the corner of his mouth. What man would not be enticed by a woman who swayed like a young sapling? She, however, would hardly be enticed by a scruffy peddler. Still, she paused a moment to watch the bear trainer. Waving a stick, the man coaxed one of the large animals to rise up on its hind legs. The crowd roared. Switching the stick to his other hand, Dominic wiped sweat from his brow, then flexed his stiff fingers, unaccustomed to curling around the wood. He looked back at the crowd. The woman wasn't there. Disquiet flickered through him. Walking forward, he scanned the rest of the throng. Gone. An apt ending, mayhap, to a senseless quest. Just as he was about to admit defeat, he spied her, darting into a side alley. As she ran, the hood of her cloak slipped off her head, revealing a mass of blonde hair. Gisela!